Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. Have a new episode today, new stories, new feel-goods. It's exciting. I absolutely love sharing these stories with you guys. So if you listened to last episode, I talked about JetBlue and what they're doing to reduce their contribution to global warming. Well, I have another very, very big company. I think you will know this company well. And I have a little story about what they're doing, to help the environment and reduce their contribution to global warming. So Microsoft has announced that they will be taking a huge, ambitious environmental step than any other corporation to date. So they are now working to be carbon negative by 2030. Yes, carbon negative. So it doesn't just stop there. They actually plan to remove all the carbon that they have ever emitted to the environment, either directly or by electrical consumption, since their founding in 1975. And they're going to do this. Their goal is to do it before 2050. So the company is launching a $1 billion fund to develop climate technologies for the rest of the world, because the technology required to achieve the goal is either very expensive or not widely available. So Microsoft President Brad Smith says, "We are launching an initiative to use Microsoft technology to help our suppliers and customers around the world reduce their own carbon footprints, and a new $1 billion climate innovation fund to accelerate the global development of carbon reduction, capture, and remove technologies. Beginning next year, we will also make carbon reduction an explicit aspect of our procurement process for our supply chain. Our progress in all these fronts will be published in a new annual environmental sustainability report that will detail our carbon impact and reduction journey. And lastly, all this work will be supported by our voice and advocacy supporting public policy that will accelerate carbon reduction and remove opportunities." Absolutely crazy. This is a huge, ambitious goal that Microsoft is going after, but they are a huge, amazing company, so I think they're going to be able to do it. So I actually wasn't aware of this, but Microsoft has actually been carbon neutral since 2012. So this means that they've invested in enough renewable energy products and carbon offsets to balance out the emissions that they create themselves. So they're at a neutral, but now they want to get to a negative, and even more than that. So they actually are charging internal fees, or they have been charging internal fees on their business units for their greenhouse gas emissions as well. But now they will be starting their trailblazing sustainability plan by sourcing all of their own electricity from renewables by 2025. Then after that, they will become carbon negative by removing more carbon from the atmosphere than they create. So they are working super hard to get to that negative point. Brad says again, while the world will need to reach net zero, those of us who can afford to move faster and go further should do so. That's why today we are announcing an ambitious goal and a new plan to reduce and ultimately remove Microsoft's carbon footprint. By 2030, Microsoft will be carbon negative, and by 2050, Microsoft will remove from the environment all the carbon the company has emitted either directly or by electrical consumption since it was founded in 1975. Such a crazy goal, but it's so cool. It's so I think it's amazing to see such a big company go after something like this. And you know what? Brad is right. You know, the people, the companies, the organizations that are able to, you know, go above and beyond need to do it, right? Because it is a crisis that is happening in our world. And so, you know, if there is organizations, if there's people, if there's companies that can make a giant step forward into helping everybody else, then that is amazing. So I thought I'd start today off with that story. Thought it was pretty cool. But now let's hop into some more feel-good stories. Some firefighters actually took over for a gas station employee that fell ill on the job. So the firefighters went above and beyond to not just help this employer's medical needs. So near Alto, Michigan, a cashier was not feeling well at a gas station, and he called his boss to bring in some extra help. And then he dialed 911. He was clearly not feeling well at all. So 4 firefighters showed up at the gas station, and they took care of the register until an ambulance arrived to take him to the hospital. Because by the time he was being carried out on a stretcher, the coworkers that they had called in had not shown up yet. There was nobody to watch the store, and customers were still walking in. So firefighters worked together to keep everything running, so above and beyond. The employee that fell ill had no idea that the firefighters did what they did until later on when his coworker showed him some surveillance footage, and he just wanted to reach out and say how incredibly thankful he is for their kindness in his time of need. They did not need to go above and beyond and do that, but they did. I just thought that was kind of a unique little feel-good story. Now, the mascot of the United States, the bald eagle, is being saved in different parts of the states. So there were only 4 bald eagle nests recorded across the state of Ohio as of 1979. But now, 41 years later, conservationists are happy to report that the number has increased drastically. So according to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, 312 chicks were fledged from 221 nests in 2015, showing no sign of slowing down. So the bald eagle breeding pairs have increased 22% between 2017 and 2018 alone. So then, in addition to teaming up with concerned and willing landowners, the ODNR Division of Wildlife partnered with various state zoos and rehabilitation services to create a climate that allowed the bald eagles to recover in great numbers. So back in 2007, bald eagles were removed from the federal list of endangered species and successfully soared off the Ohio state listing just 5 years after that. So they're just making progress and progress and progress. The bald eagle populations in other U.S. states, such as like Georgia and New Jersey, have also made very notable comebacks as well. So it just keeps going up and up. If you are in Ohio, though, and you want to catch a glimpse of this majestic bird, they say to keep an eye out in late March because their trees are remaining leafless, rivers and lakes are released from the cold winter ice, mating pairs have made their return to their nest to lay eggs, typically in large trees like oaks. So if you are kind of a bit of a bird watcher and you want to see the beautiful bald eagle and you're in Ohio, watch out in about March area and then also midwinter because it's disruptions in the eagle's hunting methods, such as like lakes being frozen and like other mammals hibernating underground. So they're forcing the bald eagles to like greatly expand their hunting range. So midwinter or March, you can kind of keep your eye open. You might be able to spot a bald eagle, which is pretty cool. Kendra Wecker, who is the chief of the ODNR Division Wildlife, says, "I am proud of our agency's restoration efforts to bring back this iconic symbol of our nation and thrilled the population is thriving here. Each time an eagle soars overhead, Ohioans have the opportunity to experience the natural beauty in our state. Nesting season is an exciting time, and I hope we can exceed 300 nests this year." Well, I hope so too. I hope the population keeps going up, up, and up because, we need that. We need the bald eagles around. But it's definitely cool to see the progress back from 1979 Ohio and having only 4 bald eagle nests to now it's drastically changed 41 years later. It just shows what these, natural resources departments do. They really do help bring the animals back, and it's definitely cool to see it live in action, all these animals going. It is time for a little bit of a break, but don't go anywhere. I have a lot more stories to share with you today. I touch on the Australian wildfires, but it's going to make you feel good, both stories I have about them, so stay tuned.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. So, like I said before the break, I do have a couple stories that are touching on the Australian wildfires, but it's going to make you feel good about them. People are doing what they can to help out. And there are a lot of big stars, famous people, celebrities that have been donating what they can or doing what they can to help out. And I have another story for you. It's about Serena Williams. So, we all know Serena Williams. If you don't know Serena Williams, she's a huge tennis icon for the United States. And she has recently donated all of her victory money earlier this week to the Australian bushfire relief efforts. So, it's been 3 years since she won a big game, but she just won the ASB Classic match against another American player, Jessica Pegula, and she's donated all of her winnings to the Australian wildfires. It's absolutely amazing. The prize money was $43,000. And this is the first big game that she has won in 3 years, because she had a baby 3 years ago. She's at 38 years old. This is her 73rd career title. And now she's actually heading to the Australia Open, where she's previously won 7 of her 23 Grand Slam single titles. Pretty cool. She says, I've been playing Australia for over 20 years, and it's been really hard for me to watch all the news and everything that's been happening in Australia with all the fires. So I decided that I would donate all my prize money for a great cause. So cool to see the people that do have, the capability to donate all that money to the cause and see them follow through and do that. It's so amazing. But every little bit counts, no matter what you're donating, what you're doing to help out. And a little boy from Massachusetts is doing what he can to help the Australian wildfires. So it's not just the big stars that are only helping with the Australian fires. And like I said, big or small, all donations count. And Owen Coley from Massachusetts has been making koalas out of clay. And they have been sending them to people who are donating more, $50 or more, to the wildlife rescue. So let me just back up a little bit. Owen was quite upset when he learned about the wildfires, and so he asked his mom if there's any animals being hurt. And his mom said yes. So I guess Owen, very quietly, he left the room and he drew a picture of a kangaroo, a koala, and a dingo in the rain. And this represented his wish for Australia. A wish for rain and for wildfire release. So this is actually, I guess, the first time that he's made something other than Lego. But his mom asked, if he wanted to help, and he said yes. And so together they came up with this idea of making koalas and then giving them in response to donations from friends and family. So right now he sent out about 55 clay koalas. So they came up with the idea to send a koala to anybody who donates $50 or more to the foundation. So he's already sent out 55 clay koalas. He's raised more than $20,000 in just a week. absolutely crazy. Owen says he wants people to know about the animals from Australia and how they are being affected. He really wanted to help because of his love of animals, but he does have more of a connection to Australia than just that. His father, Simon, actually grew up in the suburbs of Sydney, and Owen himself actually lived there for a few months when he was a toddler, and his parents say that he's super proud of the fact that he lived there before. So he kind of just keeps pulling him back to Australia. So when he heard about the wildfires, he heard about the animals, he wanted to do his part and try to help them out. So he was already making things out of clay before, but he just really enjoys making these koalas. They're super cute. He uses a silver kind of sculpty clay to make the koala's head and body, and then he adds some white clay to make its fluffy ears and black clay to shape the animal's face. It's super cute. And then the koalas bake in the oven at 275 degrees. And it takes about 17 minutes, he said. And the creations are called Owen's Clay Koalas. He was making so many koalas that he actually ran out of clay, and his mother was worried because they were getting so many donations and they need to keep up with making these koalas. But she literally bought all the sculpty clay that she could find in the 20-mile radius. So now they're waiting for more to be shipped so he can continue to make his clay koalas and send them to the people that are donating. And I guess donations have been coming in from all over the U.S. They're making a huge difference for this wildfire. But it's definitely so cool to see a young boy just kind of do what he can to help such a huge cause. Like I said, it's not just the big celebrities, it's not, every little bit counts, and he's raising quite a lot, but it's definitely cool to see. Now, my next story is about a father. His name is Sean Kelly. He's from New York, and he quickly jumped to action to lose some weight, as it was the only thing standing in the way of him being able to donate his liver to his newborn son. So he had to lose weight to qualify as a living liver donor for his newborn son, who was diagnosed with Alagille syndrome at birth, and he needed a transplant to survive and live a happy life. His wife, Josie, also has the syndrome, so she was unable to donate part of her liver, and so he was the only viable candidate. So he started his weight loss journey as quick as he can. He jumped to action. He dropped 30 pounds pretty quickly so that he could save his son. He reached that goal and then was approved to be a match for the transplant. And I guess his transplant was quite complex and challenging. But his newborn son named Sawyer is doing a lot better now. And Sean just wanted to say how grateful he is that he could be a match for his son and save his life so he can live a happy and healthy one. And he just really hopes that his story will inspire others to consider being a living organ donor, because it is, I guess, the best feeling. It was for his son, and he jumped to action as quickly as he can, but he just wanted this to be, to reach people to go out of their way and try to be a living organ donor, because it can save lives. He said it's an incredible thing to even consider being evaluated and going through the process to see if you could be a match for somebody. Everybody should try to do it if they're willing. Now, my next story is about a violinist who is inspiring young girls to go after their dreams and do what they want, no matter the color of their skin. This is so important. So in Brooklyn, New York, at Brooklyn's Ryder Elementary School, students in the Harmony program got to sit up close and personal to violinist Rachel Barton Pine. She's a very inspiring young lady. So in 1995, she suffered from a severe train accident, and she actually lost part of her leg. This was in Chicago. And so while she was recovering, she started researching Black composers whose work were not widely known. Thanks to her determined research, more than 350 Black composers spanning 4 centuries have resurfaced. She says, our primary motivation behind doing this work is to inspire young African American students that classical music is part of their history and that they're an important part of classical music's future. So they've actually created a music book called Music by Black Composers. It's even a coloring book, I guess, too. And the book's inspiration composer and violinist her name is Jessie Montgomery. And she said that she often questioned herself, thinking, am I odd for being Black and interested in classical music? She questioned herself when she was young, and now that's what she wants to do. That's what their book is trying to do, is trying to inspire young women or any young students to, follow their dreams and go after what they want and not feel odd for loving what they love, no matter their skin color. 9-year-old Janie says, I want to be a composer so I can share my feelings with the world, and I want people to listen to me. So these violinists have inspired all these people of color to do what they want, do what they love, and to never feel odd for doing that. It is time for another break, but don't go anywhere. When we get back, I have some more feel-good stories to share with you.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. So this story is pretty amazing. A grandmother who rushed back into a burning home to save her grandson is finally out of the ICU. Let me give you a little bit of a story. Her name is Kavanaugh Bay, and she suffered second-degree burns after her home caught on fire. She says she's a heavy sleeper, but the smoke detector woke her up, and that's when she began running around the house to make sure all of the rest of the family got out. But in a race against, rapidly spreading flames all over her house, she ran back upstairs to make sure her grandkids were getting out of the house. Before things got too bad, she did get upstairs, but she couldn't come back down the stairs. The smoke was too heavy, and it got too dark for her and her grandson, Quentin, to go through, and she got very scared. So she remembers throwing her grandson out the window to her son, and her son was urging her to jump out the window. But what she remembers is hearing him saying that she needs to jump, but she's terrified of heights. She is very, very grateful to those who came to her family's rescue that day and those who helped afterwards. She was in the ICU for quite some time, but she is doing a lot better. And she's just very thankful that even neighbors held a donation drive to help her and her family recover from some of the items that were lost in the fire. Some school supplies, toiletries, and a GoFundMe page was also established for the family. She rushed back in to be a hero, but she did. She survived, and she's out of the ICU, and she's doing well. Now, I think this next story might be my favorite of today's episode. It's about some preschool kids who came together to raise money for their classmate who's battling cancer. Very hard working preschoolers have come together to raise the money for their classmate Jasper. Jasper was diagnosed with a rare type of brain cancer late last year. So Jasper, at 4 years old, was taken out of school and hospitalized. But his classmates at Redding Cooperative Preschool in Redding, California, did something absolutely incredible. They did not forget about him, and they held a hot cocoa fundraiser, hoping to raise money for Jasper's family. And with help from their parents, local stores, and the community, the stand was a massive success. And they actually raised more than $10,000. these little preschoolers to help out their classmate. So cool. They really wanted to help out Jasper in any way that they could, said their teacher, Jessica Stevens. And she said it was a day that she will never forget. So I guess the local Trader Joe's provided some space and supplied water bottles. Dick's Sporting Goods offered to set up tables and chairs, and both the Costco and Starbucks donated baked goods. 3 Starbucks employees, I guess, were running back and forth to make sure that there was hot water supply for the hot chocolate. And some people who stopped by, I guess, were cancer survivors of themselves. And so I guess it was a day, people sharing their stories from their own battles with cancer, and just a lot of love and compassion all coming together and raising money for this young boy, Jasper. So Jasper's mom, her name is Shelby, and she told the news that Jasper had surgery on Monday, and if everything goes well, he will start treatment again next week. But in the meantime, his friends are checking in, and Jasper actually can't see at the moment, but his mother has been reading him the cards that his friends are sending and listening to audio from the videos that have been sent to him as well. So actually, in addition to the hot cocoa stand that these little preschoolers did, more than 350 donors have raised over $30,000 for Jasper's GoFundMe page. Pretty awesome that some preschoolers have come together to raise money for their classmate going through such a hard time. Now, my next story is about a ecologist. Her name is Nalini Carney. And so she didn't play with Barbies as a little girl. She was too busy climbing trees. She is a forest ecologist, and she is working hard at inspiring girls worldwide to play with dolls that have a magnifying glass and terrain boots instead of a tiara and a dress on. She has actually helped design a scientist Barbie. So cool. So over the past 6 months, she's been helping design this Barbie in hopes that it'll inspire little girls. So there's a whole line of explorer dolls, and there's an astrophysicist, a conversationalist, an entomologist, a marine biologist, and a nature photojournalist. And so they're calling it the explorer dolls, and it's all these Barbies dressed up. So Nalini is actually a professor at the University of Utah in biology, and she studies rainforest canopies and how plants get their nutrients. She says, as a child, I had a vivid imagination and could picture the treetop as a place of rescue if the neighborhood flooded, or as a hospital for wounded birds. Because no one else I knew climbed trees, it was my own world, and I could be anything in it. So she actually received an honorary doctorate in science from Brown University as an undergraduate degree, and her work included bringing nature into prisons to help soothe the inmates who were feeling anxious or who were potentially violent. She's done some pretty cool things in her life. She's actually currently doing research in Costa Rica on trees that are still standing after farmers have cut down the majority of the forest on their land. But she absolutely has loved designing these Barbies and helping the companies out to do this. So she sees these Barbies as a big step forward to encouraging young kids, to get on, focus on their books, focus on their learning, to get excited about those things. So originally she actually created her own treetop dolls, and these kind of retrofitting Barbies. Bought at thrift stores with sturdy boots, helmets, and climbing harnesses. And so the company Mattel agreed that she could produce the dolls on a small scale, and she sold about 400 by request over 15 years through her website, just to friends, students, and others who had heard about her efforts into introducing girls to science-themed dolls. So then, just last year, she was thrilled to hear that National Geographic was working with Mattel to come up with a new line of adventure dolls, and they asked her to serve on their advisory committee. So that's where she came in to creating this scientist Barbie and all of the Explorer dolls. So sales of these Explorer Barbies began in the summer on the National Geographic website and at retailers such as Target, Walmart. I guess she has heard from girls from coast to coast thanking her for her work in these tropical rainforests and asking questions about how they can make a difference to help trees in their own communities. So she's already received so much exciting feedback from young women, young girls wanting to help out the environment now and do what they can and getting interested in science and all those trees and kind of what Nalini does. So since she has held ecology discussions with about a dozen different elementary school classrooms across the country, and she's hoping to pass along her passion for caring for the environment and the world's endangered forest canopies to young ladies all over the world. Pretty cool. What an interesting woman. She's done a lot in her life. She's really helping out the environment to encourage young girls by, creating these scientist Barbie dolls. I think that is so cool. My last story for today is about a U.S. soldier and how he came and surprised his mom at a school pep rally that they were honoring her. She's a resource officer, and so during this big pep rally, they were honoring her and what she was doing, some other officers, and his name is Shakir Aquil, and he actually appeared on a video from South Korea, where he was deployed for 2 years, and he was set to return home in a week. So the U.S. Army soldier, Shakir, said to his mom, "We've got one more week, I'm so excited to see you," over the video that was being broadcasted. But it wasn't a week, it was actually just 1 minute, and his mom had no idea. So during this pep rally, all the team and cheerleaders came out and they charged into the gym, and then Shakir emerged from behind them, dressed in all of his army clothes and everything. And earlier that day, Shakir surprised his little brother Justin, actually, who's a 7th grader, at his school. So he showed up to his brother's school, and then he came to this high school where his mom was being honored, and he surprised both of them. I love seeing these, U.S. Army soldiers, surprising their family or their girlfriend or their boyfriend, whatever it is. And it's so cool to see those people reunite after such a long time. But that is all the feel-good stories that I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope they put a smile on your face. I had such a great time telling you these stories. As always, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, to like and follow us on social media, and leave a 5-star review. It is greatly appreciated. And I really look forward to sharing more happy, positive stories with you next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.